You ever sit across from someone on a date, and as they start telling you about their passion for travel, they show you that same tired photo of a sunset in Bali? Yeah, the one that's in literally everyone's Instagram feed. And while you nod politely, all you can think is, this? This is the personality we're hyping up now? If that struck a chord with you, you're not alone. You've entered a quiet club, one that nobody really talks about. It's made up of people who've been single long enough to develop something I call emotional immunity. It's a weird mix of blessing and curse, and it changes the way you see romance, probably forever. Society won't say it out loud, but I will. The longer you've been single, the more you start to evolve. You're not just picky. Your mind, your heart, your taste in people starts to sharpen. Like a chef who's trained their palate so well, they can taste a fake flavor instantly. You begin to see through the emotional shortcuts, the copied personalities, the same tired stories people rehearse like a script. And funny enough, the world doesn't celebrate that. Instead, it tells you there's something wrong with you. You're too picky. You expect too much. You're getting in your own way. But what if that ability to not be easily impressed is actually the best thing about you? What if your standards aren't a defense mechanism, but a compass? What if you're not building walls, but drawing a map to something real? Before you scroll away thinking, yeah, this hits too close to home, let me ask you something simple. When was the last time someone truly surprised you? Not with flowers, not with fancy dinners, but with how they think, how they see the world, how they made you feel like parts of you, long buried parts, suddenly had air to breathe. If you're struggling to remember, then stay right here, because we're about to break down exactly what's happening to you, and more importantly, why it's not a weakness, but one of your greatest strengths. Let's talk about the psychology behind your growing standards. Let's talk about how your mind has evolved, stage by stage. It usually starts right after a breakup or long stretch of being single. That first stage, that's the honeymoon phase with yourself. You've just come out of something heavy, and suddenly the world feels open again. You're rediscovering yourself. Maybe you dip into dating apps just for fun. Maybe you flirt a bit more, lower your standards a little. Not because you don't know better, but because it's exciting to feel wanted again. But eventually, something inside shifts. You enter the awakening. You start noticing how every conversation starts sounding the same. Everyone says they're spontaneous, love dogs, and don't take life too seriously. The dating pool, turns out it's not as diverse as it looks. It's just different packaging for the same recycled content. And then comes the real turning point. Stage 3, the standards revolution. This is when you stop chasing company and start choosing peace. You sit there one morning, sipping your coffee, completely content. And then it hits you. Why would I give up this peace for a conversation I've already had 100 times? You're not bitter. You're not cynical. You're just aware now. You've realized your energy, your time, your attention, it's all precious. Not everyone deserves access. You've discovered something many people never will. The quiet richness of your own mind, the comfort of your own thoughts. You've learned that solitude can be delicious, not because you hate people, but because you've finally tasted the difference between genuine connection and emotional junk food. And that's where modern dating smacks you in the face. Because dating culture today, it rewards the loud, the shallow, the fast. It punishes nuance. It's built for snap judgments and pretty bios. It wants you to find chemistry in 30 seconds. But you've outgrown that. You've developed taste, not just in people, but in connection. You've stopped getting excited by basic attraction. You're looking for resonance, for someone who speaks the same emotional language. And that, my friend, is rare. You've developed what philosophers call refined taste, not in food, in people. You don't light up when someone says they like deep conversations. You want to know what books move them, what questions keep them up at night, what silence means to them. But instead of celebrating that growth, society gaslights you. They say, you're too difficult to please, when really they're just uncomfortable because your standards are higher than their effort. And that's where the hidden superpower comes in. That hidden superpower? It's called authentic self-knowledge. While others were busy matching and ghosting and repeating the same old dating scripts, you were sitting with yourself, listening, observing, understanding. You figured out what kind of silence feels nourishing, not awkward. You can tell when someone is genuinely curious versus when they're just waiting for their turn to talk. You now recognize the difference between chemistry, which can be sparked by anxiety, and compatibility, which feels like clarity. You know the difference between attachment and connection, between excitement and emotional safety. That's not just a skill, that's a superpower. But every superpower comes with a price, and yours is no different. Because the more you grow emotionally and mentally, the more disconnected you can feel from the dating pool. You meet people who are still impressed by things that used to impress you before you evolved. Things like charisma with no character, confidence with no compassion, ambition with no emotional depth. They're looking for someone to fill their void, while you've spent years learning how to fill your own. It doesn't make you better. It just means you're on a different wavelength now. You've gone from mainstream radio to jazz, from fast food to slow-cooked meals. And now, when someone shows up offering you something shallow, you're not just uninterested, you're allergic. You've developed emotional taste buds, and once they've matured, you can't go back to bland. This creates what I call the paradox of growth. The more you evolve, the more alone you might feel. Not because you're broken, but because most people haven't caught up. And that leads to something deeply painful. The loneliness paradox. You still want connection, of course you do. But not just any connection. You want one that's honest, soul-stretching, transformative. And when all you see is surface-level interaction, it makes solitude look like the safer bet. And sometimes, it actually is. People will try to categorize you, but you won't fit. You're not jaded. You're not desperate. You're not afraid of love. You're just unwilling to trade your peace for chaos. You're not running from relationships. You're just not walking toward empty ones. And that unsettles people, because it challenges every narrative they've been fed about what it means to be single. You understand mastery, whether in your craft, your career, your creativity. You know that expertise takes time, focus, precision. You don't sample everything. You go deep into what matters. And you're applying that same principle to your emotional life. You no longer want someone who knows a little about everything. You want someone who's willing to dig deep into life, into love, into themselves. But most people are still caught up in the buffet, trying everything, committing to nothing, living in fear of missing out while never really experiencing anything. And you're done with breadcrumbs. You want a full meal, real connection, real presence, real growth. And that kind of clarity, it's powerful. But it also makes dating harder. You've even developed what I call an authenticity filter. You can spot fakeness instantly. You can feel when someone's reciting opinions they got from a podcast. You know when someone's pretending to be passionate because it sounds good, not because they are. You pick up on forced laughs, overused lines, and empty enthusiasm. You see through the show, and once you can see it, you can't unsee it. That's the curse of the filter. But here's where it gets really complex. If you're ambitious, in your mind, your career, your personal growth, this all hits even harder. Because you understand delayed gratification. You know that things worth building take time, care, and intention. But dating culture, it's built on speed, swipe, text, meet, decide, next. It's built for dopamine, not depth. And you've developed a taste for something more. You want the person who doesn't need to rush it, who values the process, who sees love as a garden, not a vending machine. You're not just looking for a date, you're looking for a partner in mastery. Someone who understands that love, like anything worth keeping, is cultivated, not consumed. But when you live like that, you make other people uncomfortable. Because your standards, they expose their settling. Your clarity becomes a mirror, and that's what really bothers them. When you say no thanks to mediocrity, you force others to face what they've chosen. And that creates tension, not because you're arrogant, but because you're honest. They'll call you picky, because it's easier than admitting you have taste. They'll call you unrealistic, because they've stopped believing better is possible. But your refusal to settle doesn't mean you're hard to please. It means you know your worth, and that makes people question their own decisions. But their discomfort, that's not your burden. Let's talk about what's really changed in you. You've built something that most people don't even realize exists, emotional immunity, but not the kind that shuts love out, the kind that filters out what isn't love at all. You've become immune to charm, without character, to attention without intention, to chemistry without compatibility. You can no longer be swayed by excitement that ends in confusion or words that never lead to action. This isn't coldness, it's clarity. You're not numb, you're finally awake. It might make dating harder, sure, but it makes real love so much better when it finally comes. Because by the time someone reaches you, really reaches you, they'll know they didn't stumble upon your heart by accident. They'll know they had to earn it, not through games or tricks or grand gestures, but by showing up fully and honestly. That's what you're holding out for. That's what makes you selective, not impossible. And yes, it requires patience, real patience, the kind that withstands birthdays spent alone, holidays without plus ones, the kind that watches people pair off in relationships that look perfect on the outside but feel hollow on the inside. Society will whisper that you're falling behind, that you're missing out, that if you don't lower your expectations, you'll be left behind. But what if the wait is actually your greatest act of faith? What if your willingness to be alone is proof, not of fear, but of love? Love for yourself, love for the kind of future you believe is possible, love for the truth that you're not looking for someone to save you, you're waiting for someone who sees you. And when that person finally comes, they won't be intimidated by your standards. They'll be inspired by them. They won't ask you to shrink. They'll expand with you. They won't see your independence as a threat, but as a promise. That the love you're building will be based on freedom, not fear, depth, not dependence, growth, not guilt. Your time alone hasn't been wasted. It's been an investment in who you are, in what you value, in the kind of love you know you're worthy of. Your selectivity isn't a bug. It's a feature, a tool, a filter that ensures the right person, when they arrive, gets the best of you, not just the available version of you. So, stop apologizing for your standards. The world has enough people who settle. It needs more people who don't. People like you, who refuse to hand out their energy like candy, who wait, who choose, who trust. Not blindly, but bravely. Because you know what happens when you give in too early. You lose parts of yourself to people who never deserved access. You don't need to explain your standards, not to your friends, not to your family, not to strangers on the internet. You don't owe anyone a breakdown of why you won't settle for less. Because deep down, you know exactly what you're doing. You're not waiting for perfect, you're waiting for right. And that difference, that's what sets you apart. Every time you choose solitude over noise, self-respect over attention, and long-term value over short-term thrills, you're building something real, even if you can't see it yet. You're building a love story that isn't borrowed, rushed, or shallow. One rooted in truth, in strength, in mutual respect. And if you're still wondering whether you'll find it, whether it's worth holding out, I want to tell you something. You're not hard to love. You're just not willing to pretend anymore. You're not broken, you're whole. And that wholeness is what makes you magnetic to someone who's done their work too. So, to the evolved single person watching this, you're not behind, you're ahead. And your story? It's not a tragedy, it's a triumph in progress. Keep walking your path. Keep choosing yourself. Keep saying no to the noise. Because the person who's right for you, they're not going to ask you to lower your standards. They're going to thank you for keeping them so high. And when that day comes, everything will make sense. Every quiet night, every awkward date, every time you walked away because your soul said, "This isn't it." All of it was preparing you for someone who doesn't just understand your standards, they share them. If this spoke to you, if it felt like I reached into your chest and read your journal out loud, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's been questioning their worth, their path, their patience. Remind them, their standards aren't too high. The world just got too used to asking for less. Comment, "I refuse to settle," if you made it this far. Because the world may try to convince you otherwise, but the truth is, you're not waiting for love to complete you. You're waiting for someone who can match you. And that, my friend, is the most powerful kind of love there is.